So, in today's lecture, I want to talk about cosmologies. And what I mean by that term is that I want to talk about those um, things, those methods, those structures, whereby traditionally and contemporarily humans have used to explain the unknown or the unexplainable. So, let's take a look at cosmologies. So, the three main cosmologies that I want to talk about, and these are the things that traditionally humans have used to explain the unknown, is magic, science, and religion. And in many ways, these three are extremely different, but they're also extremely similar. And some people have faith in all three of those and can make them balance out. Others, maybe one or two is what they put their money on. And some people don't believe any of it. But this is how people make sense of the how and the why around them. It's how do you understand your place in the world? Cut out everything that I've already said. So when I'm talking about the scope of cosmologies, I'm talking about primarily the realms of science, religion, and magic. Now, all three of these attempt to explain the world, to make sense out of the world. They have different focuses, they have different emphasis, but many people will buy into one or the other, or multiples of these, or all three, and how to explain the world. So these are belief systems. People also often say, well, science, you don't have to believe in science, it's a fact. Well, that means you believe it. If you believe it to be a fact, then it is, in truth, truth. Just as religion doesn't necessarily have to be fact in order to be truth. That's basically the difference between the two. So what I want to talk about throughout the rest of this lecture is how people make sense of how and why things happen and the roles that these play, these institutions or these structures play in society. So a cosmology is the study of the universe in its totality, and by extension, our place within that totality. Totality. I don't know why I want to keep putting another consonant or syllable in there. Cosmologies can refer to the cosmos, to the heaven, or to the world, right? We are in the universe. We are in the cosmos. We are a part of it. And so if we talk about the universe, we're talking about us as well. Now, a physical cosmology is a brand of physics and astrophysics that deals with the study of the physical origins of the universe, the Big Bang, and the nature of the universe on its very largest scale. Religious cosmology, on the other hand, and most world religions, by world religions I mean the big, 7, 8, or 9 that are out there, they tend to focus on the origin of humans, the meaning of life, as well as proper behaviors and those types of things. But it tries to explain how the world came into being. I teach world history at the community college, and one of the biggest projects that I give my students is to go and look at different creation myths. Most of us, come from the West. Many of us come from a Judeo-Christian Muslim background, and so there's that creation myth, which is the same across all three religions. Slightly different understandings, but they all use Genesis. They all use the same basic story, which was based on the Zoroastrian story from the Legend of Gilgamesh. So basically, that's 4 of the world religions right there that are pretty much in agreement as to how they view the creation of the world. Of course, all of those are from the Middle East and Asia, and they all come from similar backgrounds. So the origin myth started out pretty simple. But I would say that even here in the United States, in a non-religious way, we have an origin myth, and that is Christopher Columbus. We have two people in this country who have holidays that are named after them: Martin Luther King on Martin Luther King Day, and Columbus on Columbus Day. There's no other holiday in the American calendar named after an individual, not at the federal level. The only two people that are honored are Martin Luther King, I think that's a justifiable one, and Columbus, a person who never set foot on anything that is related to the United States. In fact, it wasn't until the summer of 2020 that they finally took the statue of Columbus out of the rotunda in the state capitol here in Sacramento, because that's how important we have placed Columbus in our hierarchy. Why is it that from the entire time that California has been a state, or most of the time that California has been a state, and we've had that state house, there has been in the rotunda a statue of Columbus trying to convince Isabella y Ferdinand that the earth is round, something that everybody in Europe knew. You could buy a globe in Lisbon 60 years before he went to talk to the Queen and the King. Everybody knew the earth was round. If you've ever been out on a boat and you look at the horizon, you can see that it curves. You can see the curvature of the earth. And ancient mariners knew that. Nobody thought they were going to fall off the end of the earth. But we've taken Columbus's story, the story of a man of science. He used technology to forge against all odds and go against those people that were so stupid they didn't know the earth was round, even though they all knew the earth was round. So he's a man of science. He's also a man of religion. He took priests and monks with him, as he had to, because his patrons were fanatically religious. He also kills all the natives on Hispaniola. There is nothing more American than killing the people on whose land you have just invaded. We talk about the Armenian genocide, we talk about the Holocaust, even the African genocide. Those are wimpy little genocides. North America, what's contemporary United States, used to be 100 million people living here. Millions were killed, many by disease that they were unaccustomed to, and many to deliberate acts. The United States is founded on the largest genocide ever conducted on the planet. And so Christopher Columbus, who killed all the natives on the island on which he landed, was a good part of that creation. But then when he didn't have Indian labor to rely on anymore, then he did what all good Americans do. Went and bought African slaves and brought them over. And if you read his journals, there was never a mutiny of sailors going, "We're going to fall off the earth, Christopher." The sailors all knew the earth was round. They couldn't fall off the earth. But that story got injected, especially at the early part of the 20th century, when there was conflict between labor and management. And management wanted to make sure that labor understood who the smart one was in the room, who to follow. Do what you're told, you'll be fine. There's nothing more American than Christopher Columbus, even though he never set foot in North America. He did step on the Yucatan Peninsula. That's it. So even there are creation myths that we understand, whether we think about it or not. And this is why it's so important to look at other cultures, or to try to look at our own culture from outside, objectively, right? I'm going to keep going back to historical particularity. We're going to keep coming back to the fact that you don't judge another culture by yours. You judge it on its own merits. Now, both science and religion do attempt to explain how the world was created. Now, it may not be how the world, the universe, but the world of the early people. Science, let's define it real quickly. It's a rational interrogation of the natural world based on empirical observation, testing hypotheses, and reproducing results, which is why anthropology is not a science. We use science, but we're not a science. Science must be rational and provable. There's no emotion involved. There's no I believe. You accept the facts, but it's not. There's no necessary. I mean, I take that. I mean, in one sense, what I'm doing. I'm saying wrong. There is. You do if you have. In order to accept the all the theories that pertain to the atom, something you cannot see, you have to use a little bit of faith there that it actually exists. That there are particles so small that you can't see. How do I prove that to you? Well, an electron microscope, but even then, how do I know that that's what I'm looking at? And so there is a certain amount of belief that has to be attached to science, but once you're within the realm, then everything becomes rational and provable. And science only seeks to explain how things happen. It really doesn't care why. It is just simply based on empirical observation, in many senses like anthropology, where we observe. Here you're observing what happens in the physical world. We observe what happens with the cultural world, with the world of people. But science is looking at the physical world and then trying to make sense out of it and then extrapolate from there. Religion, on the other hand, explains the universe by positing the role of supernatural beings. Science can never fall back and then God did this. And so science has static rules, right? Things fall within the norms. Religion can go beyond that because it relies on the supernatural. You go, well, yeah, I'm Catholic. I don't believe in the supernatural. Yes, you do. If you believe that something beyond what you can, the natural world, whether it's a god or dozens of gods or angels or pixies or gnomes or whatever, you are looking at the supernatural, beyond nature. And so religion has at its core a belief in supernatural forces, right? When you're praying, you are asking for a supernatural intervention. And so formal belief systems arise in these various and sundry religions, things that include ritual, right? You perform a ritual because it represents some principle. When you lose the meaning of the ritual and only perform the ritual, then you've kind of lost the meaning of the whole thing. Religions also have institutions that have histories that you need to understand. They require a physical space. Now, it might be a church or a synagogue or a cathedral, or it might be a crossroads. It might be an outcropping of rock. Could be an arena. It could be just about any physical space becomes a sacred space at some point in a religion. And like many aspects of human society, it has the leaders and the practitioners, those that tell you what to believe and those that do what they're told. And unlike science that explains how things happen, religion really tries to explain why they happen, which is why sometimes religion gets the how wrong. And then you get into this argument about, oh, well, no, it wasn't created that way, it was created that way. Well, I hate to say this, but the majority of the people in the world believe in different creation myths than you do. You may have the most widely held religious creation myth, but there are hundreds, probably thousands, of creation myths. Which one's wrong? Or are they all right? Because they're talking about the creation of a specific people, a specific religious group, a specific ethnic group, a specific geographic group. And so that's the purpose of these creation myths. So, like I said, when we deal with religion, we're dealing with the supernatural. And the supernatural is forces and phenomena that are not observable within nature. Miracles. Answers to prayers. These cannot be verified. You might say, okay, I said a prayer, I asked for this, 3 days later it happened. And so you look at the outcome and you assume causality. Now, there's no way to go back and check if you skipped that prayer, would it actually happen 3 days later? Very possibly could. And so you go, well, I did that, I got this outcome. I'm going to keep doing that until, essentially it's magic. Some students get real upset with me when I point out the fact that even the simple act of prayer is calling upon magical powers. You're asking for something that is not part of the physical realm to execute some sort of influence on the physical realm. So if a phenomenon can be demonstrated, right? Like you push a button and a light comes on, it's no longer supernatural. Once it can be explained, it is part of nature. And so since phenomena must be subjected to verifiable measurement for scientific theories, science doesn't approach the supernatural because you can't verify it, right? They were looking for the God gene or looking for the God atom or looking for... Once it's provable, it's no longer supernatural, if it's provable. If it's not provable and people still believe it, then it is beyond nature. It is above nature. It is supernatural. Now, any externally existent spirit that exists apart from space and time, that can have an impact on the world, might even be considered the creator of the world. It can be any combination of all powerful, all knowing, all loving. It can also be destructive, harmful, malevolent. What word is that? Malevolent. Sound like Sarah Palin there for a minute, making up words. And many religions will claim to be monotheistic. That part of their superiority over other religions is, well, they believe in one God. The all-powerful, the all-knowing, the almighty, who sends his angels. Oh wait, those are supernatural beings. Well, from a Christian or a Jewish or even a Muslim standpoint, those aren't gods. Those are angels or jinn or all the other supernatural beings that are mentioned in the Bible. Or Quran. Or Torah. But if you were outside of the Abrahamic tradition looking in, you would see Christianity, Judaism, and Islam have dozens or hundreds of gods. You've got, the archangels, and you've got this and that. You've got tons of supernatural beings that look like gods from outside. When someone from the Western traditions look at Hinduism, they see dozens of gods, hundreds of gods. What differentiates those gods from the angels in the Western tradition? Just the word. The actual application, the actual function is identical. And so even monotheistic religions that believe in one God, and one evil God, so you become polytheistic the moment you have a devil. Because a devil is a god. May not be the God, may not be the all-powerful God, but even Greek and Roman and Norse mythology had an all-powerful God at the top and a whole bunch of gods underneath. Or archangels and angels, if you want to call them that, and saints. Right? If you can pray to it, it's a god, it's a deity. Ancestor worship, your ancestors become minor deities, they become gods. If you pray to your grandmother for assistance, you've turned her into a powerful supernatural deity. And so, again, just like cultural relativity applies to almost everything, it does apply to everything. It applies to religion as well. Look at your own religion from outside. Be objective and really examine it, and you'll find that you're more similar to the other religions than you think you are. Most of the problem between, especially like all the religions of the Western tradition, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they share the same stories. You want to know more about Jesus? Read the Quran. 2/3 of it's about him and Mary and Joseph. So, what religions usually argue about isn't the teachings. Jesus abrogated Jewish law, and yet most Christians today go to Leviticus for much of their law, right? If you're an ultra-conservative Christian and believe that homosexuality is an abomination because of Leviticus, you have to also stone to death people who wear cotton polyester blends. Because in that same section of Leviticus, it says that if you wear cloth that is of multiple fibers, you should be stoned to death. If you eat shellfish, according to that same section of Leviticus, you should be stoned to death. That's the Old Testament. That's the book of the Jews. Why are Christians using that when Jesus abrogated those laws? Because they're picking and choosing. They're making their religion fit their beliefs rather than making their beliefs fit their religion. So what they're arguing about isn't that there's a God, that you should pray to it, that you're going to die, you're going to go to heaven or hell. All three of those religions agree on all of that stuff, even the ways in which you should behave. What are they arguing about? The dude. The Jews never accepted Jesus. The Christians never accepted Muhammad. The three religions essentially are a continuum. And basically, it's where do you hop off? You hop off at one point if you're Jewish, another point if you're Christian. If you're Muslim, you go farther. And so it's arguing about the dude, not necessarily arguing about the truth of the religion. So there are several types of religion. I want to cover all these as quickly as I can. Monotheism is the belief in one God, and the primary four Western monotheistic religions are Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But even they, as I said, are polytheistic. They have good gods and bad gods. They have gods that aren't as powerful, angels and things like that. Genies, jinn, demons. They're all part of that religious tradition. That's why they continue to live on. Polytheism is the belief in many gods. And like I said, the Romans, the Greeks, they were basically the same pantheon, just different names. Norse, the Vedic traditions in India, the numerous traditions in Japan, these are all polytheistic. They have multiple gods. These tend to be older religions in many cases. Then there are non-theistic religions or philosophies, religions that look like religion but don't have a supernatural entity at the core, and that they don't necessarily believe in a god or in gods. And I have to put asterisks on at least Buddhism and then Taoism as well, because even though if you were to ask a Western Buddhist what role is there a god, is there a supernatural power that is above everything else, Western Buddhists normally will say no. But Buddha talks about a universal intelligence, a power, a force. He says don't worry about it because you can't understand it. Right? So is it theistic? Is it non-theistic? Kind of however you want to apply it. Confucianism, though, is a philosophy. There's no religion involved in it. It's just ways of proper behavior. Taoism starts out as ways of proper behavior, as a philosophy, and its adherents over time, over several centuries, incorporate aspects of Buddhism, later aspects of Christianity and other Western religions into it, and really turn Taoism from a philosophy of extreme pacifism. Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, wore a mask, just like the masks you have to wear when you go out. Why? Because he didn't want to accidentally inhale a bug. Life was so precious. Now, he didn't know about germs and stuff like that, but life was so precious he didn't want to accidentally swallow a fly. And so when he was out not in the middle of a meal, he would wear essentially a mask. And then there are the what we refer to as animistic or animism. These are those religions, we sometimes refer to them as pagan, although polytheistic and non-theistic religions can also be referred to as pagan. But when we refer to pagan, usually in the European sense, we're talking about indigenous belief systems where everything has a spirit. The spring has a spirit. The stream has a spirit. The trees have a spirit. The rocks have a spirit. The earth itself has a spirit. Everything has a spirit, and you can appease that spirit and get relief or whatever. Shintoism is another form of that. It's a form of animism. So there can be very much more. Excuse me. Can be much more specific. For example, as in Shinto, where it's a very structured, or it can be far less structured. Another form of worship, and this kind of falls in between some of these, is we refer to as ancestor worship or ancestor veneration. This is where those of you, those from your family who have gone on before, continue to be part of your family, and they continue to look after your family. They continue to play a role. Deceased family members continue to exist, and they're involved in your life. And so you have a shrine set up in your home to your ancestors, especially your most immediate ones. And they continue to exist, and as long as they are remembered, they continue to exist. And the worst thing that could happen is for your children or your children's children or your children's children's children to forget you, because then you cease to exist. As long as you are remembered under ancestor worship, you have essentially an existence. Once you leave human memory, you leave the spiritual world as well. And so the goal of ancestor worship is to guarantee that continued well-being and health of the deceased, so that they can come back and help the living. And this is often, in addition to a few versions of this in other parts of the world, this is most common in Asia, especially in those areas that are related to Confucian philosophy at some time in their past. So China, Japan, Korea, that whole the East Asian area that we're talking about. Here is an example of a family shrine, and you can see the ancestors eat first. The food is presented to them at first, and then what they don't want, then the rest of the family can eat. And you can see that there's multiple generations listed there, or shown there in the various pictures. And again, it is to try to keep them alive in the spirit realm so that they can be an active part of the family. And this is a daily thing, right? I mean, many of us remember grandma or whatever once in a while on their birthday, on the anniversary of their death, on the holidays when they're not there. But just think if you were incorporating grandma into your life every single day, where at some point in every day you would then go and you would talk to grandma, you would ask her for assistance, and you would try to bless her and try to make sure that she's okay so that she can help you. That's how ancestor worship works in a nutshell. In most animistic societies, there are practitioners that communicate or are the bridge between the physical realm and the supernatural. And this is close to a universal. Almost all societies at one point or other in their existence were animistic and did have as their religious leaders shaman. Those religious leaders would then become known as druids or priests or whatever, depending on where in the world that you are. Our misunderstanding of most Native American groups in the 17th and 18th and 19th century led us to believe that what were shaman there were actually, we called them chiefs. And so Sitting Bull is always called a chief. He was not a chief. He was a shaman. He was a healer. And in times of war, he assumed a military role, like a general. That's not a chief. That is a general and a priest, right, essentially. And so a shaman's job is to be able to go where a traditional human can't. In other words, to enter an altered state, in which he or she is then able to communicate with the underworld, the afterlife, the other world, the spirit world, whatever that system has in their belief system. And it can also, that connection between the physical and the supernatural can be augmented by the use of external stimulus. That stimulus can be drugs, psychotropic drugs, marijuana, peyote, licking poisonous frogs, doing all kinds of stuff that cause chemical and biological reactions. Or it can be pain. The priests and rulers of both Mayan and Aztec societies would run stingray spines through the foreskin of their penis or through their labia majora, or would run ropes with barbs on it through a slit in their tongues to cause pain that would then be so much pain that it would drive you to an ecstatic, essentially to delusion, at which point you would then definitely see the other world. Now, I guarantee you run a stingray spine through the foreskin of your penis or through your labia majora, you're going to start seeing shit. And then these dreams these visions are then interpreted. In the case of the Maya, for example, or the Aztec, you'll see depictions in both the few codices that remain, because we burnt most of them, or the sculptures, where during a ceremony you'll see smoke rising, you'll see speech scrolls. In other words, what happens is you write down on a piece of paper or a piece of parchment what it is you want to affect. You then draw blood in the most painful way possible. You put that on the question. You put the question into the fire, and then you, in that ecstatic state of a shitload of pain, you interpret the visions in the smoke. And so you could do it, like I said, by eating peyote, smoking marijuana or something related to it, or taking poisons right to the edge without trying not to die at the end. And so that's one of the aspects of a shaman. A shaman can also tell fortunes. A shaman can also cure illnesses. They will be approached for ending drought and understanding dreams, and to travel to see how your relatives are, in the next village 30 miles away. Well, that'd take 6 days to get there. Well, he can astral project or go directly there in his visions and assure you that everything's okay or not okay. Different than a modern concept of a priest or a minister who's strictly religious. This is again a more holistic approach of the spiritual and the physical world overlapping. And other religious specialists that we have that you might recognize would be priests, rabbis, imams, monks, nuns, etc. So religion exists because humans have always attempted to understand and to also influence and control the world. And this is through supernatural powers. I can't move a mountain, but a deity can. So that which is uncontrollable and unexplainable, religion is developed to do that, to try to control it and to explain it. No matter how much you pray that the hurricane isn't going to hit your part of the country, it's probably still going to hit it. I remember my mother telling me, she was alive during World War II, and she was real confused when she'd go to church because the minister would talk about, how they had to pray for victory, and she thought, well, the Germans are praying to the same God because they're Protestants. She was Protestant at the time. They're praying to the same God in the same way, just in two different languages. How's God going to figure out which one to back? And of course, then the religious people would say, well, whoever won was the most righteous, right? That's the old trial by trial. Part of the purpose of religion is to make us not feel helpless, is to make us feel like we have some control. You might want to produce results. You might want to guide someone's journey through life. You might want to have someone fall in love with you. You might want to have someone be safe or healthy, or make someone help someone pass their entrance exams and then get into the school they want to, or to cure an illness. And my wife right now is very, very, very ill with advanced small-cell lung cancer. She has tumors from the brain to her throughout her entire torso. And occasionally I'll put updates on Facebook because we've lived all over the country and we have friends all over, and we have friends all over the world. And the easiest way to let everyone know what's going on is just to post it on Facebook. And probably 80% of the people that respond, they send their thoughts and prayers. Just like when somebody gets shot in a school shooting, it's, well, thoughts and prayers. Well, thoughts and prayers don't, my wife's still sick and those kids are still dead. But it makes people feel like they are controlling, like they are contributing to it. And if all their prayers don't work, then something else was amiss. It was nothing wrong with their prayers. There was nothing wrong with their action. It was that obviously she wasn't worthy of it, or whatever it happens to be. Religion also provides a moral code. Now, you'll hear modern atheists today say, oh, well, I don't need religion in order to be moral. That's true, you don't. And in some ways, atheists who live a moral life might be more moral than Christians who profess a moral life but don't live it. Right? And that's always the argument. Now, a Christian that actually practices their religion, that's a good thing. But many people hide behind the label and don't do it. And so the labels are less important than anything else. And the other thing that it does is it creates community. As divided as Christianity is, there's over 65,000 different branches of Christianity. As divided as Christianity is, what does create a social solidarity is that they all believe in the same history. They may not believe it the same way. They all claim to believe in the same book, the same Savior, the same God, and that creates a community. That creates community in your small town where you live, where the other 50 people in your church go to worship every week. It creates a unity planet-wide with other Christians, regardless of the denomination. At least you agree on that much. You may disagree on everything else, but there are certain things that you agree on, and you become a community in that sense. Now, magic is part of religion. And in fact, magic is often the precursor of science. Let me try to explain that. So magic is the belief that humans have power that can alter the physical world. Right? You're not relying on deistic power. You're not relying on a power from a god or an angel or some other supernatural. The supernatural under magic is within the individual, and that can cause misfortune or fortune. It can cause injury. It can cause illness. It can cause people to fall in love. All those things is that belief that you can affect the physical world without the use of a deity. Luck, chance, coincidence, not part of it. Right? Remember the example I used earlier, the 3 days from when you prayed until the event happened. Did the prayer actually trigger it? Well, I did the praying, so I'm going to say it did. If I didn't do the praying, then I'd say it didn't, because it happened anyway. And so magic eliminates all of that. It's magic. Magic, like religion, though, is an attempt to explain why things happen. The crops died because someone in the next village put a spell on it. My wife left me because that other man bewitched her. Now, in the 1850s, or actually in the 1850s, in the early 1920s, in the early half of the 20th century, we get really the first scholarly look especially within the division of anthropology, at magic. What is magic? And we're talking about the publication of The Golden Bough in 1922 by James Fraser. And he coins the phrase sympathetic magic. It's not used before that. So if you see it in a movie or read it in a book, the events happened before 22, that's wrong. And he says that sympathetic magic assumes that things act on each other at a distance through a secret sympathy. That's why it's sympathetic, right? Things are connected. And we're able to affect through the ether, through this invisible world that we know is here but we can't see. I mean, science is the same thing. It's here but we can't see it, right? You can't see COVID droplets. It doesn't mean they're not there. Or droplets containing the COVID virus. And so magic is I affect something over here, and it has an effect over here. Now, the most uh, easily recognizable of those is a voodoo doll. Well, I hate to tell you this, but voodoo dolls aren't to stick a pin in to make them have pain. Voodoo dolls are to help. It's actually, it is sympathetic magic, but it's actually very positive. That tradition of sticking pins in a doll to give somebody pain, that's a pagan European practice that has been superimposed on Haitian religious practices by white people who had no friggin' clue what they were talking about. And so things like the voodoo doll, which isn't, there are dolls in voodoo, but that's not what they're for. That whole concept is transferred magically, just like the magic of the stick a pin in and now you get a headache. And we break it down into two types. Sympathetic magic is broken down into contagious magic, that is where you come in contact with magic and it will affect you. Or homeopathic magic, where those things that are similar to the original trigger will be affected. So if you want to, let's say I wanted your car to stop running. Homeopathic magic would be, I'll take the distributor cap, if I had one, off of my car, and then send that through the ether to turn your car off. Contagious magic, I just run you down. Right? I just ram into you and destroy your car. Right? Or I pull my car up next to you and I turn mine off and yours turns off because we're using the same remote. Right? I'm trying to explain the difference between the two and how they work in very stupid ways. I hope that made some kinds of sense. So homeopathic magic, the law of similarity, says that essentially if you want to get rid of something, you get rid of everything that is like it. So in ancient Hindu practice, if someone was suffering from jaundice, rather than just feed them better and get them eating a more healthy diet, you get rid of everything around that person that is yellow. You destroy an enemy by destroying their image, right? Contagious magic is where you can take something that is physically related to the subject. I remember when I first met my wife, she used to joke about this. She'd trim her nails, go, you got to make sure those get destroyed so nobody uses them because they could put a bad juju on you. Same with her hair. And so contagious magic is you have something of that other person in proximity, you can then use that because of its association, its close association, same as if I'm standing next to them. Right? And some of these are common across many cultures. One, the one here is that if you destroy someone's footprints, you injure the feet. That's common in a lot of small-scale societies around the world, and has, just like step on a crack, break your mother's back. It's a stupid superstition. What does it mean? Where does that come from? It comes from this concept of contagious magic. Wrapped up with magic and religion is the idea of taboo, a strong social prohibition or ban that deals with some human activity. Some religions don't allow people to drink alcohol or use recreational drugs. Many religions downplay premarital or extramarital sex. Other religions couldn't care less. What is taboo is something that the society feels shouldn't happen because it's dangerous to the society. I mean, many of the things that we argue about on our social issues here in this country are dealing with things that are taboo. Right? Look at abortion, right? For a small percentage of the population, abortion is murder. It is wrong. And that's their whole belief system. They don't care what happens to the person after they're born. They just got to get born. And so they have an abortion taboo. They would never do it, although many of them, once they get pregnant, do it. But that's hypocrisy, and that's rampant in human society. The incest taboo is another almost universal taboo. And there's no reason for it. There is absolutely no biological or genetic reason to prevent you from having offspring with your siblings, except in the case of certain recessive diseases that tend to be amplified when they are close family members that are breeding. This is why all the crowned heads of Europe are crazy, because they all come from Victoria. And so breaking a taboo for whatever reason that it's established, usually it's a safety thing or something like that, but breaking that taboo, especially if you break it openly, can cause all kinds of problems both for you and for the society as a whole. Taboos are sympathetic magic. They follow that law of similarity. So let's talk about some weird taboos. So cat's cradle, right? You take a loop of string and you run it through your fingers and you play with it. That comes out of Eskimo and Inuit tradition. But it's only played by the girls because the boys have to be able to tie and to use on a regular basis fishnets. And if they're getting their fingers tangled in string, that could mean that they're going to get entangled in their nets, right? Or in a harpoon line. And that could be very dangerous. In ancient Italy, in Rome, in later years, women couldn't spin yarn, right, with a spinning wheel on a high road or on a hill, because it could create wind that would then damage crops. Now, does it really? No. But did they believe it? Yes. And so they acted accordingly. Now, I know with the internet, the word fetish has a whole different meaning than the one I'm about to use, but the one that I'm talking about is essentially a charm or other object that you believe has supernatural power. This could be your St. Christopher sitting on your dashboard. That's a fetish. It could be your lucky rock that you rub. It could be your lucky poker chip that you hold in your hand when you're throwing your dice. It could be anything that you have that can give you power or can protect you from an outside attack. It can be religious in nature, like I said, a St. Christopher medal or your favorite prayer book or something like that. You fetishize it when you give it supernatural power that you can use. And that's all a fetish really is. I know there are other fetishes with, nurses and maids and stuff like that, but that's not what I'm talking about. So what are the things that religion, science, and magic have in common? Well, they all attempt to classify the world, to change, to categorize beliefs and behaviors and things, all in different degrees depending on which one we're talking about, science, religion, or magic, into categories. So good and evil, that's both a religious and a magic thing. Might even be science in a little bit, good and bad. The sacred versus the profane, the plant versus animal, all of those categorizations get flipped, right? Your religion may differentiate between humans and animals. Science acknowledges that humans are animals. Anthropology will make that division between humans and animals. They are different. But there are also others that don't fit either category. Australopithecus, Neanderthal, all of the other humanoid and hominid species that are around, those that don't become the great apes, but those that become part of the human chain, some of which die out, some of which get incorporated, like Neanderthals. If you have red hair and freckles, it is likely you have Neanderthal DNA somewhere in your system. The Neanderthals were in Europe when the humans, the Homo sapiens sapien, came to Europe. And one died out, probably because the Homo sapiens killed them and ate them, but they also bred with them. And so we find Neanderthal DNA in European, or people of European descent, and it is more prevalent in one of the factors that Neanderthal passes down is red hair and freckles. So if you have a friend who's a friend who's a redhead, you can say, "Hey man, you're a Neanderthal, dude. You're a caveman." Caveman's a whole other issue we will talk about maybe sometime. All three, religion, science, and magic, all just try to explain what causes what, and how things relate to each other. Now, philosophies will also do that, but religion has that as one of the things that it means. So, and all of them assign meanings to things, right? What is the proper behavior? How does the real world work? What happens if you piss off God, right? These are all aspects that these three deal with. Some don't deal with. For example, science doesn't care if God's pissed off, right? Magic might be dealing with if the supernatural is angered, and of course religion would be as well. And that is kind of in a nutshell the core of what I want to cover as far as the belief systems that are universal throughout human culture. There are lots of commonalities, and it is yet extremely varied. Just for fun, go look on the internet and go look at different creation myths, and look at all of the different ways in which humans have decided and determined over time that humans came into being. Some societies are made out of dust. Some societies are made out of corn and blood. Some societies you're made out of something else, right? And who's made first and why? And do those first beings interact with the gods? Do they tease the gods? Do they ignore the gods? Are they forsaken by the gods? All different. And they can't all be right, and they can't all, I was going to say they can't all be wrong. Yes, they could all be wrong. But you can take most of the creation myths and hold it up against science and say, okay, well, let's forget the, like with the Judeo-Christian myth. Let's take the days out, right? Especially because how do you measure a day before the sun is up, right? It's kind of hard. They're talking about day one. There's no sun. There's no earth. How do you measure a day? Well, that could be 4 billion years, right? It could be from the Big Bang to the cooling of the planet. And then there are the seas. That's the first thing created on the Earth. Well, we know that initially the planet was covered with water, with one big landmass that eventually splits up. Still, the majority of the world is the seas, right? So you can take religious imagery and associate. This is how many people justify their belief in both science and religion. They've come up with scientific explanations for their religious beliefs, or religious explanations for their scientific understandings. And on that note, talk to you next time.